Good afternoon, everybody. Master Frank Galindo here at Concho Valley Martial Arts Center at Sunset Mall. Today I'm going to do something a little bit differently than what I've normally done. Basically going to work on the pattern histories, going to go over these with you at 3 different sessions. The first session will be the beginner level, Chunji, Dangun, Dosan. We'll move up to intermediate at Wanhyo, Yulguk, and Jungun, and then proceed with the advanced levels at Twege, Wadan, and Chungmu. That being said, I'm going to start off actually with Saju Jirigi, Saju Maki, just to let you know these 2 exercises are actually not patterns, but they are precursors, foundations, bases for the patterns that we do, all the patterns that we do in ITF Taekwondo. Technically, we claim that we have 24 patterns, as General Che would say, 1 for each hour of the day, or 1 to represent the lifetime of man. Okay, so basically, I can attest to this, that it takes a good long while to come to a full understanding of all the patterns as practiced by ITF Taekwondoan, ITF Taekwondo students. Saju Jirigi, Saju Maki, 4-direction punch and 4-direction block are practiced at the white belt level. Again, these are just foundations for moving up into the higher, more advanced patterns, including Chunji, which is more advanced than Saju. Most of these patterns build on the previous exercise or pattern, and we'll find that as we go through the patterns, 99% of them have movements from the previous pattern as practiced in the ITF curriculum. That being said, let me move on. One more thing. Saju Jigi, Saju Maki both have a plus sign. A pattern diagram is a plus sign. Only 1 foot moves at a time, so that when we finish our movement, we are exactly back where we started, given that we don't do a step and a shuffle like we're so inclined to do at that beginning level. But anytime we do our pattern, we should finish back close, very close to where we started our movement, started our pattern. Okay, Saju Maki, of course, moves back initially for the blocking movement, and then after that, the footwork is just exactly the same. The handwork is different in each of those. In Saju Jirigi, that is a punch and a block. And in Saju Maki, it is simply blocks. A low knife hand block with starting off with a back-to-back load, blocking hand on top or other side, and an inner form outer block, palms down load. So at Saju Maki, we do introduce that second load, the palms down load, to get ready for Chunji. Chunji Tol, 19 movements, represents the heavens and the earth and the Orient and the East, Far East. It's seen as the beginning of human history, or beginning of mankind. And I say in the Orient, basically it goes back to Korean culture. And there are 2 separate movements, 2 distinct but separate movements, similar but separate movements. The first half of the pattern, all our blocks will be pointing down to the ground, and all our stances will be a walking stance. So the first 8 movements that we execute will have walking stances and walking stances only. And anytime we move in Chunji, we go to the side of the hand that's punching. So if the right hand is punching, we're going to go to the right side. If we're going right, we go 180 degrees to the right. If the left hand is punching, we're going to go to the left side next, only 90 degrees on the left side. And that is true throughout the whole pattern, except for the last 4 movements, which finish up the pattern with 2 punches going forward and 2 punches going backward, walking stances with each of those techniques. Chunji, again, beginning of history, beginning of human history, beginning of mankind. That's why it's the first pattern, the beginning pattern, the starting pattern that we practice in Taekwondo. The pattern diagram is a plus sign. If we do the pattern correctly, again, without the step and shuffle, but only with the step, we should finish back where we started. And if we were able to lift ourselves up off the ground and look down at where we started our pattern, we would see a semblance to a plus sign if this pattern had been practiced in the mud or snow or loose dirt, where we could see the stepping movement. And that's where the pattern diagram comes from, is what the shape it forms when we do the pattern correctly. Again, that is Chunji tool. I don't think there's really much more to say about that pattern. Chunji means heaven and earth. Chun means heaven. Ji means earth. Although we do the earth part first, where all the blocks point down to the ground. Maybe it should have been Ji Chun, but General Che did what he did, and Chunji is what we grew up with, and that's what we practice. Move on to the next one at yellow belt, moving on up to green stripe, moving up from 8th gup, moving up to 7th gup. And that is a yellow belt pattern, Dangun. Dangun represents the Holy Dangun, the legendary founder of Korea in 2333 BC. Of course, it would not be AD since we're just at whatever year we are, 2020. So we have 300 and some odd years to go before we get to the 2333 AD. But 2333 BC is when Korea recognizes its history as, or the starting point of its history, of its people, of its culture. There's a long history involved in the foundation of Korea and how that got started. They have their religious implications, as we have our Christian biblical implications for mankind's start. The book that I refer to more often than not for pattern histories is this one. It's called The History of Taekwondo Patterns. It's written by Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Richard Mitchell, who is at the time of this writing was a 5th degree black belt. Mr. Mitchell is now a grandmaster. Grandmaster Mitchell is part of the ITF system, and he's one that wrote this book, and I refer to this quite a bit. You can tell that I use it regularly to give me some more insight on these patterns and so on. But up to Dangun, 21 movements. The pattern diagram for Dangun is a capital I, maybe a sideways H. But Dangun, again, the legendary founder of Korea in 2333 BC. If you want to see the full history of how Dangun came to be, this goes into Dangun meeting a bear and a lion under the sandalwood tree up in Baekdu Mountain near Lake Chunji. So lots of history here. Again, most of these patterns are based on Korean historical figures, Korean prominent scholars and statesmen, and that's where these pattern histories come from. Okay, so moving on up from Dangun. There's not much more on Dangun as far as pattern diagram, pattern history, unless you want to read the account that Mr. Grandmaster Mitchell wrote at that time. All right, thank you so much. We're going to move on up to Dolsan. Dolsan tool. Dolsan consists of 24 movements, and we're moving from 7th gup, which is the high yellow belt green stripe, 7th gup on up to green belt, up to 6th gup. Okay, but we work with Dolsan first to learn that pattern to go on up to green belt. Dolsan is named after the patriot An Chang-ho, who lived from 1876 to 1938. Okay, he basically was a driving force in bringing working for the education of Korea's people, education and independence of Korea. And a side note, and you don't have to know this for testing, but it's just FYI, Mr. An was actually in San Francisco studying the workings of a democratic government, the United States, and so that this would be something that he could take back to Korea. This is again at the turn of last century. So Korea was trying to get started into a democratic republic, and they were basically building it and structuring it after the United States. And he was in contact with the president of Korea at that time, Ri Syngman was the president of Korea at that time, and kind of letting them know that, hey, this is the way they do it in the United States. This is their government structure. This is their the way they run their government. So these are things that were taken into account by the political figures in Korea at that time. All right, so again, Dolsan-tul, 24 movements, represents the patriot An Chang-ho, 1876 to 1938. Some accounts will say that he was born in 1878, but 1876, 1938, and again, he was basically trying to improve Korea's independence or Korea's education, and was instrumental in helping them gain their independence, Korean independence movement. And so we'll stop at that point. This covers the first three patterns, the beginning level patterns, Chunji-tul, Dangun-tul, and Dolsan-tul, and of course Saju-jigi and Saju-maki are also part of that discussion. So I hope you enjoyed this. Stop by the studio whenever we get a chance to return, and I do have this reference book on file. Thanks for watching. I'll continue with the next three patterns here shortly. Thank you much.